two authentic Egyptian names in the Book of Mormon. He also noted that the names appear in close reference to the original Book of Mormon language, Reformed Egyptian. He didn't know how to explain the appearance of these names and doubted that Joseph Smith could have learned Egyptian from any early 19th century source. Perhaps, Albright suggested, Joseph Smith was some kind of religious genius. Next one, Alma. The critics for years said, well, Alma's a Latin female name, and here you have characters in the Book of Mormon that's a male Alma, and so they gave Mormons a hard time about this. Well, a number of years ago, it was found in some tablets and near the Dead Sea that it talks about Alma as a son, male name. So again, from the right time frame, the right area of the world, we find that Alma was an actual male name, and we have record of that. Next one. Arabia, unknown Arabia. This is the path that the Lehites would have traversed as they journeyed out from Jerusalem before they got on the boat to the New World. Now, Joseph Smith wrote a lot about this in 1 Nephi, or translated about it. If he was making this up, how much could he have known? Well, according to the books that were available at the time, there was either little known or most of what was known was completely wrong. Some of the books talked about how Arabia was so hot that animals were roasted on the plains and birds in midair. The southern coast of Arabia was thought to be dismal and barren, nothing but a rocky wall. It was even said that not even a blade of grass could grow there. There were a few books that talked about fertile areas, but they said that the fertile areas had rice, maize, and tropical fruits, all of which is wrong again. So if Joseph Smith would have followed what was known of his day, it would have been marks of a fraud. Well, fortunately, he got it all right. We know, first of all, that there's a frankincense trail. These people would come in from the coast, and they would bring these different frankincense and follow up the trail to Jerusalem and other places to leave some of these spices. And these were wide trails. They weren't like our hiking trails today. Sometimes they could be a mile wide, but it was a general path. And it's very likely that Lehi took that trail. The Valley of Lemuel. We know that there's a place called the Wadi Tayyib Alazim, I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, that there's a river that runs continually. In fact, it's about the only one in this area. Here at the mouth of this is a sheer granite cliff that rises 200 meters. There's a gorge that extends 4.5 kilometers and vertical sides of 400 to 800 meters high. Kent Brown, an LDS scholar who's investigated this, says, in my view, this narrow gorge with its sheer rock walls of 2,000 feet brings us closer to Lehi's words, firm and steadfast and immovable, than any other canyon in the region. I'm going to, in the interest of time, skip the next one on the Tree of Life, but there's some wonderful things there as well, and we're going to go to Nahum. We read about in 1 Nephi that when Ishmael died, he was buried at the place called Nahum. And it's interesting that throughout the trip, the Lehites tend to name the places that they go, Valley of Lemuel and River of Laban and so forth. But here's the place that was called Nahum, which means that was the name given to it. In the late 20th century, non-LDS German archaeologists discovered an inscription on some altars of man belonging to the tribe of NHM. Well, Hebrew doesn't have vowels, so Nahum in Hebrew is NHM. A few years later, two more altars from the same excavation were also found to contain that tribal inscription of NHM. And non-LDS scholars say this was an actual location. It wasn't just the name of a tribe. Recently discovered maps show where this same place was on maps that, again, probably weren't available to Joseph Smith. The NHM means to comfort or console, and anybody could bury their dead there. And what happened with the Book of Mormon people? They buried Ishmael there as well. And one of the fascinating things about it is that from Nahum in the Book of Mormon, what happened afterwards? They turned nearly eastward, which is exactly what we find in the Book of Mormon in the Frankincense Trail. Bountiful, and this may be the last little bit. Let's talk, well, we've got a couple of minutes. Let's try to get this one in here. Bountiful would have been the area that they went to on the coast where they built the ship. And like I said, most critics said there was either nothing there or there was rice and maize, none of it matched. There's a very small area, and I might have lost track here, but we've got a slide. There might be an enlargement of it there. There we go. Okay. And of a fertile area called the Dhofar region. And the Dhofar region is one area, and like the only area, where there's actually very fertile trees and fruit, wild honey and things like that, and wood for shipbuilding. And it fits right where it should be for the Book of Mormon story. Like I said, there's no other place that along the coast that could have really matched other than this region, and it wouldn't have been known to Joseph Smith. Okay, let's move, even nearby iron deposits. I was going to point that out, which they would need for tool making. Let's see, it should be let's move forward to, there's a picture of a robber, a thief. There we go, okay. In the Book of Mormon, we find the term thieves and robbers. Now, to modern Americans, what's the difference? Under ancient Near Eastern law, however, there's a significant difference between the two types of criminals and how the law should punish them. A thief was typically a local person who stole from a neighbor. Thieves were tried and punished by local townspeople. A robber, however, was an outsider, a terrorist, a highwayman, a bandit, or guerrillas. And robbers typically belonged to organized groups and attacked towns, menaced people. Well, what do we find in the Book of Mormon? Who are the bad guys? A lot of times, the Gadianton robbers. The Book of Mormon always uses robbers and thieves correctly. Which, again, if Joseph was writing this, what are the odds of him getting that matched up to what we know from ancient Hebrew? Okay, the next one here, double-sealed documents. In ancient Israel, in about 600 BC, that's again about the same time that Lehi departed Jerusalem, Israel employed an ancient practice of using double-sealed and witness documents. Now, important legal documents typically were written on a single sheet of papyrus, but in two parts. The text was written twice, it was copied. Once on the top and once on the bottom. Now, the second occurrence of the text on the bottom could be a duplicate copy of the original, or it could be an abridgment of the full text. The document was folded, so the abridged part was open for inspection and reading, while the second part was closed with a seal. They put a little clay seal on there, so if the seal was unbroken, you knew it wasn't contaminated, altered. So if a question came up about the accuracy of something in the exposed part, they would get at least 3 witnesses together and open the unsealed or the sealed part to show it. Well, what do we know about the Book of Mormon? Of course, besides the fact that we have 3 witnesses to it, we know that there's a sealed portion of the Book of Mormon, and that it's thicker than the part that we have. And not only was this done in papyrus, but it was done in metal plates. So we see the Book of Mormon with the sealing and the exposed part just like it was done in ancient Hebrew times. Disarming Ammon. In Alma 17, we read about how Ammon protected King Lamani's flocks from a group of Lamanites. After the battle ensued, what did he do? He smote off the arms of the cadavers, we read, and brought them back to King Lamoni. Well, that's kind of a gross thing to do. Why did he do that? Well, in ancient Near Eastern customs, there we find artwork that they would cut off the arms, or sometimes other limbs, hands, feet, and so forth, and they bring these severed limbs in for vouchers or reward as like mercenary pay. Well, it has recently been shown that the Aztecs had a similar practice. This ancient artwork depicts Aztec warriors holding the severed arm of their enemies like trophies. According to a review of one early Spanish conquistador's writings, when Spanish soldiers were captured by the Aztecs, the warriors would cut off their victims' arms, and the Aztecs would taunt those Spanish soldiers who were still within earshot. Aztecs who proved their prowess in battle often gained social privileges, such as the right to wear special clothing and enjoy special foods. Bringing back the severed arms of an enemy was one way to prove valor in combat. So again, right at home in both the Old and New Worlds in the Book of Mormon. One more. In the original Book of Mormon, we talked about it came to pass, okay? And how it meets Old World usage. Well, I've got here, I think, at least one glyph, a Mayan glyph, that non-LDS scholars have translated, I have 2 there, as "and it came to pass," and also "and now," or "and thus." So we find glyphs from the New World, like I said, that non-LDS scholars translate as "and it came to pass." Now, I'm not saying that was necessarily Book of Mormon text there, but saying that they used the same reasons of putting pauses or starting, this is another section, as we find both in the Old World and that we find in the Book of Mormon in the New World. Okay, let's, I'll just close up here when we have to move through any slides. Like to end here by talking about knowing the truth. President Ezra Taft Benson said, "Every man eventually is backed up to the wall of faith, and there he must make his stand. No person can